Hello, viewers. Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Clean Slate on your favorite TV, Abuja City TV. My name is Alvin Ichekosu, and here on this segment of the program is Olamilekan Adigun. Olamilekan Adigun, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Olamilekan Adigun is a social commentator, a journalist of international repute, and he's also into investigative journalism. Olamilekan has written an insightful article on his reportage about the current contract scam in the transmission company of Nigeria, as he alleged that the director and CEO of TCN has awarded over 30 contracts to cronies of crony companies in transmission company of Nigeria. Olamilekan, let's start with the title you have written on the reportage for Abuja City Journal. You titled your reportage "Investigation: How TCN boss Sule Abdulaziz allegedly awarded billion naira illegal procurement contracts for tree cutting to cronies, phony companies." Now, Olamilekan, you have alleged that Engineer Sule Abdulaziz, the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Transmission Company of Nigeria, you said he has violated the Public Procurement Act of 2007 by unilaterally awarding 33 contracts running into billions of naira to alleged cronies and shell companies. Nigerians would like to know, can you elaborate a little bit on your reportage about this allegation?
Thank you very much, Alvin. I started this project, on a personal quest to get transparency and openness in public office in Nigeria, which it begins to look like something like a big deal in Nigeria these days, which is not supposed to be, if you ask me, because if you are holding a position of trust, or public office is a position of trust, so that's hang my belief that there is need for us to have more transparency in public offices. And going back to your question, this Sule Abdulaziz, he is the agency boss and acts of corruption, but is now in the business of awarding in acts of corruption, but is now in the business of awarding cronies, awarding contract to cronies through using third-party agents, using underhanded means of awarding contracts. Now, the Public Procurement Act of 2007 is very, very clear about who can award contracts 50 million upward of contract, and what constitutes emergency procurement. Now, emergency procurement, in the process of you doing your job as an agency, as a public servant, yes, you can incur some some procurement under emergency conditions. That is, cost. But hey, this is all the contracts that we talk about over 33 of them to about 37 companies or thereabouts, were not contracts that would normally are falling under the emergency procurement. And considering the fact that many of these companies are linked either directly or indirectly to agents of Sule Act of 2007, which needs to be adhered to, he quickly ran. He wrote a letter, or like a reciprocal action. Okay, I'm going to write to the Bureau of Public Procurement to come and ratify the. But the Bureau of Public Procurement responded almost in a very, very firm manner that you can't get approval for this because they do not constitute, and they do not constitute emergency procurement. And even the Bureau of Public Procurement even said that all the professionals involved in these shady deals, contract award, should be brought to book, which in Bureau of Public in their reply to the letter written and signed by Engineer Abdulaziz to them. So it just shows that this all related offences commission, because this should not be swept under the carpet. We are talking about billions of taxpayers' naira, for crying out loud.
Well, thank you very much for that insight. When you mentioned emergency procurement, you said earlier in your speech that contracts that constitute emergency or of that nature are issues of, say, ecological and the rest of it. So can you tell Nigerians a little bit of the nature of contracts that should fall under emergency procurement?
Okay. In 2020, there was what they call COVID-19. The nation was not prepared for it. So many agencies actually incurred expenses in that time, which which will have constituted emergency procurement at the time, which they will need approval for much later. But the contracts we are talking about in the case of TCN are just routine contracts. For example, clearing of the compound, mechanized line link. These are just not routine that even operatives of the TCN carry out on a normal, regular basis. It's like, okay, it's like paying. It's like saying that the salaries of sweepers of this building, for example, constitute emergency. How does it?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense. So you are now cutting of trees. How does cutting of trees in TCM that normally these are normal environmental?
You also mentioned erosion.
No, the erosion that you're talking about in the case of there are some that may constitute emergency procurement. But for the varieties of this, due to the nature of the contract, based on the document that we published with the article, they do not. And the article, the response of the Bureau of Public Procurement identifying those particular contracts says they do not. That means every expenses incurred must be returned back to the nation's coffers. So, but today, what we see is that the Sule Abdulaziz have just been, in fact, in his reply to the article on Friday, he just came up with watery explanation that he didn't provide any single evidence to show that the Bureau of Public Procurement actually, presented a categorical approval for this contract. And this shows that there is a lot of shady things. And from what I got from my sources working in the TCN, what this man does is that he tries to play clean. He uses, I don't want to mention some people's names on air, but he uses some staff in the agency, a man who is supposed to have retired, since October, is still in service. He doesn't have the power without the recourse to the head of service of the Federation, or in the case of the Secretary of Government of Federation, as the case may be, this man did not follow all that process. But because this man was being used to, do all these dirty deals for him, he kept him in service so that he can continue his shady activities. The question is, what is Engineer C. Osuji still doing in service after 3 months after retirement when he's supposed to have proceeded on terminal leave. So these are questions Nigerians are asking, and these were things that even prompted me when I conducted this investigation, and I was like, no. A lot of shady things are being done here, and we need to, and this engineer Sule Abdulaziz needs to stop bullying people. He needs to stop, throwing about all this, yes, nobody have accused me. But towards the end of your tenure, you are engaged in acts that constitute corruption, using phony companies, using third parties, and these are in clear violation. What we are having here is clear abuse of power. We are talking about we are talking about clear abuse of power. We are talking about conflict of interest, and I think the Code of Conduct Bureau should be involved in these matters too as well, because I don't understand how a public servant will be this ignominious in this and enjoy it. I don't seem to understand at all.
That's a very good one there, Mr. Olamilekan. So you mentioned phony companies. Can you tell Nigerians at least a few of these companies that enjoy this?
Now, many of these, like the Bua Enterprises Limited, many of them incidentally are based in Abuja here, and the funny thing, many of these companies, their addresses are suspicious, because we ran background check on some of these companies. They don't do anything other than, now, part of the Public Procurement Act presuppose is that before a contract, of maybe 5 million upward, which an agency can, within its confines award, you have to submit it to national what they call NCB, or in some cases ICB, the International Competitive Bidding, where you allow people, you advertise the contract, then everybody comes to show, oh, okay, I'm bidding for this contract with this, I have these resources, I have that resources. Many of these companies don't even meet the requirement to even compete in the bidding process, because many of them don't even have the infrastructure. Many of them have no physical addresses. Many of them cannot even show evidence of tax remittance in the last 5 years, and these are very, very,
to know if they are up to date,
even know if they are up to date. And these companies, somehow these companies found their way into getting huge remittances with nothing to show for it. Normally there are, if you go to TCN office, there are people, many of these contracts, there are operatives that are employed to do these jobs, clearing, cleaners and things like that. But these companies, have bidded for this contract. Some of these contracts have been awarded previously. They've been re-awarded, and that is the painful part. No accountability, no and that is why you see that there is a clear attempt to bypass established procedure, to bypass every discussion regarding accountability. And many Nigerians don't really realize this, that many Nigerians don't like being called to account. I don't seem to know the reason for this strange behavior and subhuman behavior, if you ask me.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on, we still have a few questions, which are myriads of questions on the tongues of Nigerians. You said the contracts were meant for bush clearing or tree cutting and erosion control on transmission towers.
Yes.
Does this fall under? Apparently, it doesn't fall under emergency procurement, like you said. So, according to Section 43, the nature of this contract follow a bidding process. Was there any form of? Anyways, you said in your speech there was no form of bidding. There was no.
What we had, sorry to cut you. What we had as bidding was just a charade. They already know those they wanted to give the contract to. It's just a case of you've already passed the exam, but let's just show the world that you are writing the exam just to look a bit honorable, so that it will just be that, okay, we've met the requirements of the Public Procurement Act, which in itself is an insult to the intelligence of Nigerians, because these are companies that do not primarily even meet the requirement to even be part of the competitive bidding process, because they were not. They were just. These are just companies that, and the way many of these. And it may even shock you to know that many of the companies that even they were part of the bidding, were actually even phony companies that were aimed at even getting these companies to get the contract. And it is that bad. Look at, okay, we have a situation, like one of my sources said, that, okay, we just got all these companies together, maybe 5 or 10 of them. We already know the company we are going to give the contract to anyway, but we get many of these to submit so that it will look like a competitive process.
Yes.
But the company that they wanted to give the contract to will be one of the people that submitted a bid for the contract, which really at highly inflated prices, because everybody needs to get a cut from it and from that. So that is what you had. They just had a chariot of called bidding process to give this contract to many of these companies, which they are now parading as as efficient and many of these companies don't even have physical addresses here in Abuja. That is the painful part. You can't even locate them. Even if you want to try them now, you have to do a lot of, human's job looking for these companies. Why do you need to look for companies that are credible? If many of these don't even have online presence, it is that bad. You can Google the names of this company and they will tell you the portfolio of the investments that they've handled in the past, in the last 5 years, for example.
So in the course of your investigation, Olamilekan Adigun, do you have any documents to buttress your points?
We had enough documents that were published with this story, and that is why, when I saw the reply of the TCN, I looked at it. How do you define illegality? If illegality is defined as something that is not legal, that is within that means that something negates a section or a clause of a law or of a code, it just tells me it's illegal. So you cannot come out again to come and tell me that, because BPP agreed with maybe a few contracts you awarded, and majority legitimize all the 34 or so that you awarded, so that it will look like you did a good job. But that is not how it is done. That is not.
Today, I would like to.
Well, like any investigative job of this nature, especially those of this nature that come up with privileged documents, you will normally get a couple of reactions. I've seen threats here and there. I've seen people phony calls. I've heard of phony calls. But that doesn't disturb me in any way, because I just know that I did my job, in the interest of the public, and I want everyone and I want to put it on record that if anything happens to me, then the TCM boss should be held responsible. But that yes, there was.
So, with a very critical view from the backdrop of your reportage, I think there will be need to contact some of these law enforcement agencies to look into this critically, especially the EFCC, the ICPC. Have you made any contacts?
There is no way. In fact, one of the reasons why this article was published was to attract attention, to alert the investigative agencies. And I have spoken to one of my friends in the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit that this matter is a matter of economic intelligence. What you have here is an issue of economic sabotage. What you have here is an issue of high-scale corruption. What you have here is an issue of abuse of office. You can even, because how do you think many of these terrorists get financed? It's through all these phony means, where you channel contracts through underhand practices. And here you wonder why it is difficult to defeat Boko Haram and banditry in this country.
Exactly.
Why it is difficult to control kidnapping in this country. Why it is difficult to to control armed robbery and drug and the drug. So what are you telling me really?
Have syndicates.
Please, let's talk about.
All right, we call it a wrap on the program for today. It's been Clean Slate, and we've been spotlighting issues of corruption in the office of the Director and Chief Executive Officer of